Hello everyone, it's Tommy Oldham here, and today Gareth Southgate will announce his provisional squad for England's Euro 2024 campaign. They'll be playing 2 friendlies ahead of the tournament. One of the games with Iceland is on the day of the deadline, so I'm guessing that he'll be submitting that squad list after that game, but by then he will pretty much know his number. A big squad is expected to be announced today, around 30 players, maybe more. It has been hinted that after the Bosnia game, he'll be looking at full-size 11v11s behind closed-door games in the squad. Got to remember also some of the players, such as Bellingham, being a good example, will be playing in Champions League action still. A few players will be playing in the FA Cup final this weekend. A couple of clubs have arranged selfish end-of-season friendlies, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for these that say club before country, but when clubs complaining about, we're playing too many games, scrapping FA Cup replays and put the thing on international football, playing an end-of-season friendly doesn't, for money reasons, doesn't help. But that's a totally different subject. Back to the point. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to pick around 32 players. If he's going for 32, if he's looking at 11v11, I'm going to look at it as it's like an international game where we'd have 11 players, 5 on the bench, and he'd probably rotate them in and out. Again, I've never known a tournament where there's been such a big, good core of players to pick from. We've got a lot of good, encouraging young players coming through. We've got last season's under-21s who were Euro Championship winners. Add to his existing squad members and players who've come into form. Now, one argument is that, we should stay loyal and teams that win tournaments have a good core squad. And to be fair, that's right. There's nothing wrong with showing loyalty. And yeah, you do need a good core of players. But at the same time, in between previous tournaments, we've seen ourselves players who are injured, players that are out of form, while other players are coming to form. And you've got to balance it right. You've got to look at what these players can offer to this team. Under Southgate, we've reached a World Cup semi-final, a Euro Championships final, and a World Cup quarter-final, and he has to go all out to win this. We can't keep saying, well, it's the next tournament. This generation now, some of these players are at their peak, and we've seen the amount of talent he's got coming through. And I think this is Southgate's last stance, regardless. I know I said that before Qatar, but I do think he will step down after this, and he'll want to go out a winner, and we all want to see him win. And I think the minimum spare standard he has to win it, but would be a semi-final. Now, we have a lot of strengths areas such as right backs where we're absolutely overwhelmed with right backs. You think of players like Klein, Wan-Bissaka, they're not going to be included, but in the past have played for England in that position. Then you look at a weak area, maybe the left-sided spot. Players a few years ago like Rico Henry, who was talked about it, but he's never really put himself into that position. But it just shows there's a wide range of players from all different areas. In attack, we've just got so many options at the moment. And I'm just trying to think what I would have, but how I think Southgate will go as well. At some point, there'll be a brief review, probably tomorrow morning when it's announced. And then before he submits his squad, I will pick my final 26 players. I was supposed to do a podcast on this originally, 4 others, but the lad cancelled the other day, and the lad who wanted to do it with me has just spotted out whether I'm going to ruin his street cred or make him too popular. I don't know, so it's down to me to do it. I know some of my picks will not go down popular with people, but that's football. We all have opinions, some we agree with, some we disagree with. So let's get going and let's start with the goalkeepers. So when we're looking at this provisional squad, even the final 26, there's some players that'll be in there regardless. You already know that: Pickford, Ramsdale, Walker, Maguire, Stones, Trippier, Rice, Bellingham, Trent, Alexander-Arnold, Foden, Saka, Kane and Grealish will already be in that squad. So it's a case of who gets the other positions that are available. And even if picked, the likelihood is that the whole of the 26 players will not be used. And we've seen in the past players, a good example is Connor Cody, who Southgate said is good to have in a dressing room, someone who's there. He knows he wasn't a guaranteed start, but he's good for like lifting spirits. And it is about being patient, because you've got your 3 group games and then it's your knockouts. And if you get in, you get lucky. Now, in some circumstances, we could win the group. We could have that final game to spare, and Southgate may chop or change. He may find it that he may rest the player if he thinks there's a risk of a yellow card and I'm not wanting to get booked for the late stages. Now, I do think in previous tournaments, I'm sure it'll take place now, is although he submits that squad on June the 7th, if there's any injuries, you can withdraw and replace the player up until the day the tournament starts. And I think that has happened previously, so that gives him a couple of extra time to look at those he may include if they're not fit, while having others on standby. So let's go to the goalkeepers, and the goalkeepers are probably the easiest ones to pick. Now, you're in the 23-man squad, you're supposed to have a minimum of 3 goalkeepers. I think the provisional squad is going to have 4. Now, Pickford is going to be number 1. He's been number 1 keeper for England. He's held it his own for many years now. And one advantage he's got is, compared to a lot of the goalkeepers in the other European nations, is that Everton have not played European football. So after games, he's had that extra rest time, rehabilitation, recovery time, although he'll probably happily swap that to playing the Champions League, Europa League or Europa Conference League. So he'll be certain. Now the next one will be Aaron Ramsdale. Now Ramsdale did lose his place early in the season and spent the majority of the season as number 2. So he understands what being a number 2 already is like. It will probably frustrate him. I do expect him to get game time or to be involved in either one or both of the friendlies, especially as Pickford had that big season. So it gives Southgate a chance to look at him, see if he's a bit rusty, get himself back into that routine. There is a chance again, if I've said before, England win the group, he may get thrown in. There's chances Pickford, if he got injured or got suspended, so he's ready on hand. Now your 3rd choice keeper, like all these, will not be used. Bearing in mind exceptional circumstances, both keepers got injured, one got suspended and got injured. Now, Southgate's 3rd choice keeper would probably be Nick Pope. Now he got injured during the season and he's been out quite a long time now. We did play in Newcastle's last game of the season on Sunday, and he has been on the bench the last few games. The advantage with Nick Pope is, because he's 3rd choice, he could have that extra few games to rest to get him rehabilitated and see if we can throw him in if need be. But if Southgate thinks he's not fit, it won't be Sam Johnston, although he's in the last squad for the Brazil and Belgium games, he's injured. So then who would probably be the next keeper he's looking at? Now Dean Henderson, his form recently for Crystal Palace has improved, so he's got to be worth a shout. Jack Butland was once England's youngest goalkeeper. He has been involved in tournaments before, and he is Rangers' number 1 keeper, so he has got that experience. I know you can say that about the Scottish League, but if called upon, he is there. The 5th one is young James Trafford. Now, James Trafford was part of the under 21 squad that won the championship last year. Now, he's been at Burnley this year, and Burnley haven't had a good season. I've not seen a lot of people rate or rave about him, and I've not been necessarily that over-impressed with him myself. I think he needs another year or 2 to establish himself, and whether he remains at Burnley, being in the championship, is another point of view. So I don't really think he'll be near it. I think for myself, Southgate, if Pope is injured, will probably go for Dean Henderson. Now on my shortlist for defenders, I've actually got 12 down. It will not be 12 in a provisional squad, but a couple just in case. So I'm going to start with one of the most problem areas for England, and that's left back. Now, the last decent left back England had was Ashley Cole, so it's been big shoes to fill. Now, I myself, and we know his 1st choice would be Luke Shaw, and Luke Shaw did play in the finals of the last Euros. He scored a goal, but he has been injured. He hasn't played an awful lot this year. Although there's reports coming out from Old Trafford that he's back in training, questions are being asked overall about his fitness and will he be ready for the Euros. I'm just seeing how many games he's actually played this year for United. 12 appearances, and his last one was in February. Now, I do like Luke Shaw, but the gamble is, do you take him now for a left back? Could probably get away with 1 game, 2 games, but the fact England's on paper 2 toughest opening games are the first 2 is a risk we're going to take. Now, another player who can play in that position is Ben Chilwell. Now, Chelsea themselves didn't have a good season to start with, but finished on a high. But Chilwell himself has been injured. He hasn't had a great season. The fact is, if he takes both him and Shaw, you're already gambling on 2 players, fitness-wise. Now, another option, and he's played him before, and if he goes with experience, is playing Kieran Trippier. And Trippier can play in that position. I know he's had a few injury scares himself. He's not had his probably best year by his own standards at Newcastle. Now, it's funny because there's 2 other players in the Newcastle team who could play in that position. People talk about Lewis Hall, whose form towards the end of the season picked up well. Another one is Valentino Livramento, who can play in both left back and right back. Now, he could be an outsider wild card to get in the squad, Livramento. I think Hall is just a bit too soon. Another player who could play in that position is Mitchell at Palace, but again, I think it's just with the competition ahead, Southgate would probably prefer playing it safe and going for the experience with Trippier. Another option could be Rico Lewis from Manchester City, who's got himself into the team at times under Pep this year. He's had a good run out of games. He's a young upcoming youngster. You could say, again, he's at a tournament too soon, but he's another one to look out for. Joe Gomez of Liverpool can play in various positions at the back. He's got himself back into the England setup. I do think he will be in the provisional squad along with Chilwell and Shaw. Now, right back, we are blessed with so many right backs. Kyle Walker is the first choice. Again, we could have Trent, who's going to be in midfield, probably could play in that position. You've also got Reece James, but again, Reece James has spent the season, for me, most of it injured, and he missed the last World Cup through injury, and the question is, do we take that gamble on him? Add to that, you've also got Trippier, who can be switched and can also play in that position as well. Now, the next one I'm going to is the centre-backs. Now, Maguire and Stones are going to be the 2 number 1 choices. Now, Maguire is injured at the moment, but it's expected he'll be fit for the finals. Now, during the last friendlies, he tried out Dunks, who didn't do too good. I think it showed why Maguire's important. Stones is going to be starting anyway. And if he's having these friendlies where 11 against 11, will he experiment Stones with other players? Now, the first backup, and he's had a good season, is Gooey from Palace, but he himself's had a bit of an injury scare, which is a bit of a worry. Who else could be called in? Well, Cons has had a good season for Aston Villa, and I think he will make the provisional squad. Another player who'd be surprised, he's got experience, and he's been on loan at Bayern Munich and had a good second half of the season, is Eric Dyer. Now, one advantage with Dyer is, if thrown in, we know what to expect from him. Now, going back to the left-back position, I've seen a few people mention Dan Burn at Newcastle. And fair, again, he's not been too bad the last 2 years, but I look at his age, he's not been mentioned, and I don't really think there's any plans to bring him in at this stage. Now, you've got Tomori at AC Milan, but again, it doesn't seem to be featuring Southgate's plans. I don't think he'll be in the squad. I don't really think he's necessarily set the world on fire Colwell at Chelsea. Again, I think, is this a tournament too soon for him? But one player it could be looked at, and he was in the last squad, is Jared Braithwaite. Now, I think he's had a good season for Everton. I think, especially with Everton's financial problems that have been talked about, he could be on the move in the summer. He's played with Pickford, and he's also a left-footed player. So again, he could be that player thrown in at left-back if need be. And I know we talk about experience, but same time, if you've got a good young player knocking on the door, it'd be stupid not to consider him. So I do think he will be in the provisional squad as well. And that makes it for the defenders at the moment. It just shows, like, say, how high the competition is at the moment, because Ben White asked not to be included. And people slating him, oh, is he not interested and all that lot? I think the opposite. I think, you know what? He's been honest. If he doesn't want to play for England, that's fine. Look elsewhere. I have a player in who could be disrupting the squad, doesn't want to be there. I don't always say about people that don't want to play for the shirt. Well, he's been honest anyway. Whether it's in management, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Now it starts to get interesting. Midfielders. Now I've got 8 midfielders who will probably be in the provisional squad, or I'd like to see included. So, first one, Jude Bellingham. We know he can play midfield, he can play in an attacking role, play out wide, he could play in that holding role, defensive role. Conor Gallagher now, again, he's played well. It doesn't really excite me, Conor Gallagher. But on his day, he can put in a performance. He does make things happen at times for Chelsea. Now, the next one is a controversial one. It's Jordan Henderson. Now, I said when he was in Saudi Arabia, he should not be included in the England squad. And it's nothing against... At the end of the day, if he's a footballer and he chose to go to Saudi Arabia, that's his choice. But when you've got experienced players, younger players playing in a better standard league in a tournament, you don't want to be really seeing players playing in a league that's not really up. So that's now he left there and he went to Ajax. Now, I don't really think he set the world on fire at Ajax, but that was an attempt by him to keep his international career going. A bit like when Beckham went to the MLS, he went on loan to PSG and AC Milan. Now, Southgate likes him, and it's good to have around the dressing room. He offers experience. Now, for me, that's a fair point, but John Stones has experience. Even Harry Maguire has experience. Jordan Pickford is experienced. Harry Kane is experienced. Even Phil Foden at a young age, who's been there, has experience. I just feel, for me, Henderson's best days are behind him. Give him an ambassador role, have him on the bench, but for me, I wouldn't have him in the squad. But that's just my choice. James Maddison. Now, Maddison, I was crying out for him to be at the last World Cup. Now, to be fair, I don't think... Again, he's not one who's not really reached the heights expected of him. I know he's had injuries. And Spurs themselves didn't finish the season. I know they won the last game, but they weren't particularly in great form. Declan Rice, nailed on. He's in there. He's had a good season with Arsenal. Disappointed that he didn't win the league. And in a way, that's where you look at Henderson and a player who's not in there at the moment, Calvin Phillips, who could play in that role if Rice gets injured. But I also feel Bellingham could play that role if need be. And the next one, a youngster, Manuel from United. Now, I was crying out for Manuel. He looks good. He's got good technique. Yeah, he's young. He won't be star, but I still think he's one of these where he could be a game changer. Now, the next one, I've sang his praises on Twitter the past couple of days, is Eze at Crystal Palace. This lad offers a lot more. He can play up front. He can play out wide. He can play in the middle. He's not afraid to get that ball and have a go. Yeah, he'll be an understudy to Phil Foden. What an understudy to have. And a player who could become an impact player, who could come on, help change a game. If maybe he's been in brilliant form for Crystal Palace. I do think he'll be in the provisional squad. I'll be disappointed if Southgate doesn't have him in there at some point, or doesn't have a look at him. Now, the next final midfielder I've gone for is Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, we know Trent can play midfield and defence. I know there's been some calls of how good he is. I actually think he is a good player. Again, he's one of them that even if he doesn't start, throw him on. He can put crosses in. He's got a goal in him. He can deputise at the back if need be. He knows how to pick a pass out. And for me, Southgate is trying to turn him into a midfielder. And I think, I wouldn't say he's a wild card, but he could be that dark horse, that one who could do something that you're not expecting him to do. I know a few people said in the past about his commitment to England, but I think sometimes for some of these players, especially at Liverpool and Man City, when you're playing for managers like Pep and Klopp at a good attacking football, and you come in playing for Southgate, and he has not always the most positive tactics, it can be frustrating for him. Now the forwards, I've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 10 here. Again, I don't think he'll take all 10, but I think he'll have a look at them within these provisional squads. So I've got Jarrod Bowen, getting last year won the Europa Conference League with West Ham. I know they've not finished too well, but he's had a good season. He looked decent in a friendly against Belgium. Phil Foden, alongside Jude Bellingham, for me at the moment, is the most exciting English player we've got. He can play in a false nine, he can play as a striker, he can play out wide, he's better being played in the middle. He likes to shoot from different angles, he can pick a goal. We missed him in that Euro final in 2020. And obviously, straight away, we know he's in the squad. And the next one is Anthony Gordon. Now, he's been withdrawn from Newcastle's friendly as he took a knock. Gordon's had another good season. As well as being in midfield, he can also, I talk about that left-back position, he can also play in defensive needs. He offers that versatility. I think he's done enough to be in not just provisional squad, but to be in the full squad. Harry Kane, don't need to explain more about him. He's England's most prolific striker. He's gone to the Bundesliga and in true Harry Kane style, hasn't won a trophy, but he's still finished top goal scorer. I'm sure he'll be eager to really get his trophy to his name. Cole Palmer, many players have played at Man City, have left Man City not really done anything. A good example was that Iheanacho, who played a few years ago. Palmer's gone to Chelsea, he's set the team alight, he's scored goals, he's provided assists, he's looked good. And for me, to not have him in that team would be, or in the squad, right, not the team, but not have him in the squad would be a mistake by Southgate. He's one of the most informed players we've got. Now, I wouldn't have him in the squad at the moment. Nate's picking, that's Marcus Rashford. He's not had a good year. He's been in and out of the team. There's times for every good game he's had too many bad games. And for me, I just think at the moment, there's better options out there than him. Bukayo Saka, again, he's had a good season. Over the last few weeks, some people say he's been a bit not with it, but he's been in action. He's had a long season. He's shown at the last Euros and the internationals throughout the year what he can offer. Ivan Toney's a funny one for me because he's very Kane-like. Now, we had that ban, so he's technically still fresh, but he played well against Belgium in that friendly, but I've not really seen a lot of him to make me think he gets in ahead of Bowen. I know it's an unpopular opinion, that's just what I think. But I still think he'll be in a provisional squad, and now it's gone up to 26 players. I do think Southgate will probably include him. Ollie Watkins, I did say he didn't play well against Belgium or Brazil in them games, the Brazil game, but he's had a good season, plenty of goals, plenty of assists. He's got Villa into the Champions League. For me, it'd be a mistake not to include him. Now, the final pick is another controversial one, Jack Grealish. We're all crying out for him in Euro 2020. Now, he's a Champions League winner, he's a Premier League winner, but this year, he hasn't played a lot. He wasn't in the last squad, that was down to injury. For me, players can go into tournaments not having a good year, but then you look who he plays for, who coaches him, and the players he plays with and he's played against. Now, I know when Sterling went into Euro 2020, he hadn't had a particularly good season. I do expect Grealish to be in the squad, not just the provisional one, but the final 26. Now, you think of some of the players that haven't made it. Some have mentioned Dominic Solanke. Again, he's had a good year for Bournemouth. He did win the England Under-20s World Cup back in 2000, I think it was 17. But for me, this year's been his best year, but I think we need to see more from him. Mason Mount has been injured. Phillips, again, he's not played enough, he's been injured. I know Callum Wilson did play in the last World Cup, but again, he's nowhere to be seen. Now, couple of other players I may have liked to have seen but won't be included. It's Ward-Prowse. I know I was crying out for him, but with the other options we've got in that team now, there is better players there. Loftus-Cheek, he's played at Milan, 18-1, decent year, but I've not heard anyone really crying out, rattling any feathers for him to be included. Morgan Gibbs-White, good season at Nottingham Forest, but again for me, he's one maybe for the next tournament. Harvey Elliott's a funny one. He's got a lot of appearances for Liverpool, but until recently doesn't seem to have established himself as a starter. So, but he's come on as a sub. He's one maybe to look at, but I think he's one for the next tournament as well. Curtis Jones was mentioned at Liverpool, but his form's been hot and cold. It's dipped at times. I don't really think his needs running or not for this tournament. Anyway, a few people mentioned Ross Barkley playing well at Luton. It's good to see him playing well, but again, being realistic, it's his first good season in how many years, and there's other options. If he leaves Luton, joins another Premiership team, keeps that form up, who's to say maybe he may get looking at the next World Cup. And for me, that's it now. There's not really anyone else who stands out, or I think will get into that squad as a wild card. So I'm Tommy Oldham. There will be a brief look at the squad when it is announced today, and then I'll do my final pick for who I think will be in the 26 nearer the time. So keep the faith. See you on the terraces.